Environment variables. You know, many of the scripts you'll write in your vast scripting career, which by the way started a couple of videos ago, you'll need to reference some sort of file or path or profile. So let's take a sample script. So we'll go and open up Notepad and we'll simply type in dir c/windows. Now this is rather obvious. We're telling our script to use the dir command built into Windows and display a listing of what's inside the Windows directory on our C drive. Now this is all well and good, and in the majority of cases this script will run just fine. But what happens if the script is run on a computer which has had the operating system installed on the D drive? Or maybe it's run on a Windows NT4 system where the default directory is called WinNT. Well, I'll tell you what will happen since you asked. Your script will fail. Oh. But with shell scripts, the C:\Windows is a variable. Well, it should be, but it's not very variable in this particular case as it's been hard-coded. Now, if your Windows installation is not in C/Windows, then this script fails. It's that simple. A better solution would be to use a method that can find out where the path is to the Windows directory and automatically use that instead of relying on it being hard-coded. Generally speaking, when scripting, keep in the back of your mind that hard-coding things is fine as long as you can always guarantee that the path will never change or the file will always be there. If you can't, you need to start looking at variables. So let's consider our dir c:\Windows. Do I know of a way of finding out what the default Windows directory is? Well, I'm glad you asked. Yes, I do. Windows comes pre-built with a bunch of common variables called environment variables, and we can find out what they are by simply going to a command prompt and then typing in set. Now here you'll see a whole bunch of environment variables referencing things like your user profile, your temp directory, your home drive, and of course down here at the bottom, your Windows directory. So here we can see that my Windows directory does indeed default to C:\Windows. So our script would have worked fine for me. But using environment variables instead of hard coding is truly a much better way of creating a more robust script. So how do we reference an environment variable? We use the percentage character. So instead of using C:\Windows, we'll change that to read %windir%. Now before you ask, yes, you need to start the environment variable with the percentage symbol and end it with the percentage symbol. Now if we save this, and I'll just give this a name of env.bat and choose save, and we'll go to our command prompt and we'll simply type in the name of our batch file and hit enter. And because the output's rather long, we'll just scroll back up to the top here and we can see that what we've actually done is a dir of C Windows. Now let's take a look at another example. Let's say I want to produce a script that copies a text file to a user's desktop. Now I don't actually have an environment variable that references the user's desktop, but I have a user profile environment variable that's pretty close. Looking at the results of our set command earlier, we can see that our user profile references the documents and settings folder followed by the username. Now the desktop of this user account, the administrator account, is located inside this administrator folder. So I could simply reference the desktop of the administrator by using this syntax. Now that would be exactly the same thing as us writing C:\documents and settings /administrator/desktop. Don't believe me? Well, let's run it. And here we can see that the output of our command is indeed pointing to the administrator's desktop. Alright, now here's a gotcha. Let's have a look at this exact same syntax, except this time we'll get rid of the echo statement and we'll use the dir command instead. So what I'm trying to do here is to produce a directory listing of everything on my desktop. Cool? Let's run it. Oh, we got an error. The system cannot find the path specified. So why is that? Well, whenever you see an error like this and you're damn sure that you typed it incorrectly, honest, the path exists, you yell. Well, remember that Windows has a habit of not liking you, especially when you try and use paths that contain a space. Hey, and before you smummy pants in the back tells me that user profile / desktop doesn't have a space, well, that's true. But user profile is really just a front for documents and settings. And remember, that does contain a space. So to counter this problem, we'll use quotes. We'll need to quote the entire command here. We'll just save this again and we'll go back and rerun it. And hey presto, it works. Okay, well let's get on the slightly trickier side of tricky and string a couple of these together. But first, I'll go and open my computer and I'll navigate to my C drive and I'm just going to right click and create a new text document. Now back to my script. Now let's say we want to copy this new text file from my C drive over to my desktop via a shell script. Easy. Firstly, we want to copy a file. So I'll type in copy. Now let's go back to our command prompt and again I'll just type in set here. And we can see that we do have an environment variable for our C drive and that's called system drive. So back to our script, we can use the %system drive % variable followed by a slash followed by new text document.txt. Now remember that even though our environment variable doesn't contain a space, the file name does. So we'll need to go back and enclose this in quotes. Now finally, we want to copy this new text document to my desktop. So we'll use %user profile % / desktop. And remembering to enclose that in quotes as user profile does contain a space. Alright, we'll save this and we'll go back to our command prompt and we'll give it a crack. Bingo, it works. Now to verify that, we'll just go and drop out to our desktop here and we can see the new text document we've just copied over via script. Now environment variables are cool, but what if there isn't one that you need? Well, you can create your own. Now let's assume for the sake of the argument that every single desktop in your entire company has a folder on its C drive called data. Why it's there I don't know, but it just is. So I'll quickly whip one out of thin air by going back to my command prompt and I'll just type in md for make directory, C:\\data. Okay, we've just created the directory. Don't believe me? Well, rather than typing in dir C:\\, why don't we use one of our newfound powers of environment variables and just simply type in dir %system drive % followed by a \, and we'll hit enter. And of course the system can't find the file specified, and that's because I spelt it wrong, and I'm going to spell it wrong again. Okay, and there we go. Now here we can see our data directory which we just created. See, I told you so. Alright, now if we type in set again, you'll note that there is no environment variable available for our data directory. So let's do the world a favour and create one. Now this bit's really difficult, so pay close attention. You need to think of a name to call the variable. You got one? Cool. Now try and make it different to any of your existing environment variables though, or you might have some problems. Now don't forget the name you just thought of, that bit's really important. So we'll type in set followed by the name you just thought of. I thought of data. Pretty tricky, eh? So we'll type in data equals C:\\data. And of course we're using C:\data because that's where the directory is on everyone's computer in our fictitious company. So we'll hit enter and it's done. See, I told you it was tricky. Now we have an environment variable for our data directory. Don't believe me? Well, we'll simply type in echo %data% and hit enter, and there it is. Or we could have just saved some typing and just typed in the set command and we'd see it right here in our list. Okay, so let's use our copy script as the example again, and we'll change the last part of our script and we'll remove the %user profile % / desktop and we'll add %data%. Okay, let's run with it. We'll run our command and there we can see one file copied. So let's go and take a look inside our data directory and there we can see the new text document. Now I will point out that by default, an environment variable you create with the set command will affect your entire system because these environment variables have a global scope. A better alternative is to set environment variables to only run during your script's execution. In other words, we can set an environment variable in our script, use it, and then lose it once the script completes. Now for this to happen, we'll need to use the setLocal and endLocal commands to make an environment variable affect only either this script or a portion of the script. So to make an environment variable apply to entire script, you'd simply place a setLocal command anywhere before your set command. So let's run through a sample script. We'll simply type in echo off to turn off text echoing, then we'll type in setLocal. Now we'll set our environment variable, so we'll type in setData equals C:\data. And when our script runs, we'd like to see what actually our data environment variable does resolve to, so we'll type in echo %data%, and then finally we'll use the endLocal command. So we'll just save this and go back to our command prompt, and I'll just clear the screen to make it a little bit easier to see. Now when we do run this, we can see that the output hasn't changed since our last time that we ran this. Our environment variable data is still showing C:\data. So let's go back to our script and we'll make a change. This time we'll reduce the scope of our environment. So now we'll make the environment variable apply only to a certain portion of our script. So we'll leave the setLocal command as it is. Again, just making sure that the set command here appears after our setLocal command. Alright, and now what I'll do is I'll change my environment variable to equal something else. Okay, how about the number 25? Okay, so next we're going to echo out the value of our setData environment variable, which happens to be 25. And then we have our endLocal command, which is here where we want the environment variable scope to end. Okay, well let's just copy out this echo %data%, and I'm going to add it to the bottom as well. Okay, so we'll now save this and we'll rerun our script and see what happens. Okay, we can see the first environment variable printed was showing the value of 25, which we set, but the line after it shows the old environment variable C:\data. So what happened here is that the setLocal and endLocal commands limited the scope of the environment variables to only a small portion of our script. In other words, the data environment variable was only 25 up until our endLocal command executed. Now I recommend that you become familiar with using the setLocal and endLocal commands, as they're very useful to prevent your set commands from accidentally affecting any of your system variables. And it also prevents problems with your script from inheriting values from an earlier run of a similar script like we just saw. Now by the way, if you hate using the command line, and I suspect you don't, as you probably wouldn't be watching these videos, you can set environment variables using the GUI. So if we click on Start, and then right click on My Computer and select Properties, followed by the Advanced tab, and then come down the bottom here and click on the Environment Variables button. Here we can view, edit and delete any of the existing environment variables that are defined on our system. In the top window up here we have the user specific variables. Here we only have 2 by default and they both point to temp directories. At the bottom we have the machine specific variables. Now if we scroll down the list, you'll probably see that these look rather familiar. So if you want to create a new environment variable, simply click on the New button. You'll just enter in a name for the variable. So using our previous example, we just enter in the name of data, and then we need to enter in a path. So again, we'd enter in C:\data. Click OK, and that's it. And without wanting to point out the obvious, you can also edit and delete any of your environment variables as well. Hey, I trust by now that you're starting to get excited about scripting. Now in this video, we've looked at using environment variables to overcome the problem of using static, hard-coded variables. Environment variables, as we learn, are great because they can solve the problem of differences that may occur between different computers, such as a path to a file or a directory not being the same. In the next video, we'll learn about using a different type of variable with our shell scripts. We'll learn about using arguments. We'll see you there.